How millions of pounds of sheep wool are made into clothes. If you're wearing wool right now, chances are it's keeping you warm, comfortable, and stylish. But before it became that cozy sweater or pair of socks, it went through quite the journey. And it all begins with one unassuming source: the sheep. Yes, those fluffy creatures grazing in the fields are the unsung heroes of your favorite cold weather wardrobe. But how does wool go from those woolly sheep to the clothes we wear? It's more than just a haircut and a wash. The journey from fleece to fabric involves several precise steps. From shearing and cleaning to spinning and dyeing. Let's break it down and take a closer look at how millions of pounds of wool are transformed into the clothes we can't live without. The raw materials. Wool straight from the sheep. Wool begins its life on the sheep's back. It might seem like a simple thing, but wool is actually one of the most versatile and sustainable fibers on Earth. Made up of keratin, the same protein found in human hair and nails. Wool is naturally durable, breathable, and water-resistant. It's no wonder it's been used for centuries in clothing. From the finest cashmere to your everyday winter sweater, wool is more than just soft. It's water-resistant, insulating, and even naturally fire-retardant. In fact, wool's amazing ability to regulate temperature means it can keep you warm in winter and cool in summer. So the next time you reach for that wool sweater, just know you're wearing a piece of nature's finest engineering. But not all wool is created equal. Sheep, like people, come in different breeds, and each breed produces a different quality of wool. Merino sheep, for example, are known for their fine, soft wool, which is perfect for high-end garments like suits and sweaters. On the other hand, sheep like the Romney breed produce coarser wool, often used for heavier products like blankets or carpets. In fact, wool quality can vary dramatically depending on the breed and climate. Some sheep produce fine wool that feels soft against the skin, while others might create a more rugged fiber suited for outdoor gear. It's one of the reasons wool has so many uses, from luxury apparel to durable, practical clothing. Shearing, the great wool harvest. Once the sheep's fleece has grown thick and fluffy, it's time for the annual shearing. While it might sound like a quick haircut, shearing is a highly skilled job. Farmers use electric clippers to carefully remove the fleece in one continuous piece, ensuring they don't hurt the sheep in the process. The fleece is then rolled up and transported to the wool processing facility. You may be surprised by how much wool one sheep produces. A typical sheep yields anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds of wool each year, depending on the breed and the climate. Shearing isn't just a necessary chore, it's vital to the sheep's health. Without regular shearing, the wool can become too heavy and cause the animal distress. While sheep naturally shed their wool, they don't get the neat, professional cut we see from shearers. So that's where skilled hands come in. Scouring. The first wash. The next step in the wool journey is scouring. Freshly sheared wool is covered in lanolin, a waxy substance that helps keep the sheep dry in the rain. But before we can make anything soft and wearable out of this wool, we need to get rid of the lanolin, along with any dirt or grease that's attached to it. Scouring takes place in large industrial washing machines where hot water, soap, and sometimes special detergents are used to break down the lanolin and wash the wool clean. This process is a bit like giving the wool a spa treatment. It gets rid of all the oils and debris that could interfere with the spinning process and the quality of the final product. Once the wool is thoroughly washed, it's carefully dried. But here's the catch. While the wool needs to be dried, it's important not to overdo it. Too much drying can make the wool brittle and less durable. The drying process has to be just right to maintain the wool's natural properties. Wool is known for its ability to resist odors, a trait that comes from the lanolin in the fibers. This is one of the reasons why wool socks, for example, are a favorite for outdoor adventurers. They can be worn for extended periods without picking up a nasty smell. So even after a good wash, the wool retains some pretty impressive natural qualities. Carding and combing, getting the wool ready for spinning. After scouring, the wool still isn't ready to be turned into your cozy sweater just yet. The next step is carding, which is like combing the wool into a more workable form. Carding machines break up the wool and align the fibers so they're ready to be spun into yarn. It's a process that makes the wool softer, fluffier, and more manageable for the next steps. Carding machines have giant rotating drums covered in wire teeth, and as the wool passes through them, the fibers are separated and straightened out. The result is a soft, fluffy sheet of wool which is then rolled up into roving. This roving looks a little like a cloud of wool and is the precursor to yarn. At this point, the wool is becoming something more tangible. It's not quite yarn yet, but it's well on its way. But carding isn't just about making the wool fluffy and soft. It's also a crucial step in ensuring the wool is the right texture for the final product. Carding creates the perfect blend of fibers that allows the yarn to hold together while still maintaining wool's signature softness. It's also worth noting that historically, carding was done by hand. Imagine, hundreds of years ago, people would sit with hand carders, combing and separating wool fibers for hours. Fortunately, machines do the heavy lifting these days, but the end result is still the same: soft, fluffy wool ready to be spun. Spinning. Turning wool into yarn. Once the wool is carded and turned into roving, it's time for the magic to happen. Spinning. This is where the wool fibers are twisted into yarn, and it's a process that's both an art and a science. The roving is drawn out and twisted using spinning machines, which help create the yarn's texture and thickness. Spinning is key to the final outcome. The finer the wool, the thinner and more delicate the yarn can be. On the other hand, coarser wool produces thicker yarns, ideal for heavy sweaters and coats. The spinning process is where wool really transforms into something wearable, as it's turned into long, continuous strands that can be used in knitting, weaving, or other fabric-making processes. The spinning process is one of the oldest forms of textile production, dating back thousands of years to ancient civilizations. While we've come a long way with automated spinning machines, the principle is still the same. The wool is twisted and drawn out to create yarn that can be used to make everything from luxurious scarves to sturdy outerwear. At this stage, the wool still has a long way to go before it's ready to wear. Spinning makes the wool into yarn, but it's still just a bunch of twisted fibers, rough around the edges, and definitely not ready for a trip to the store just yet. Dyeing. Bringing color to the wool. Once the wool has been spun into yarn, it's time to add some color. Wool might look like a natural off-white when it's first processed, but in most cases, dyeing is a crucial step that brings the yarn to life. Dyeing wool is a delicate process. The fibers in wool are naturally absorbent, which is why the dyeing process can give wool such rich, deep colors. When wool is dyed, it's typically soaked in hot water mixed with special dyes. The key here is temperature control. Too hot, and the wool can shrink or felt. Too cold, and the dye won't bond properly. One of the reasons wool is such a popular fabric is how well it absorbs color. Unlike synthetic fibers, which sometimes just sit on the surface, wool actually locks the dye into its fibers, creating a more vibrant, long-lasting color. This is why wool garments tend to maintain their colors for years without fading as quickly as other fabrics. There's another interesting aspect of dyeing wool. It's a process that can be as varied as the colors themselves. For example, some wool is dyed in large vats to create a solid, uniform color, while others are dyed using techniques like hand dyeing or space dyeing, which creates beautiful, one-of-a-kind patterns. After the wool has been dyed, it's rinsed to remove any excess dye and left to dry. This drying process is just as important as the washing. It needs to ensure the yarn maintains its softness while also making sure the color stays bright and true. Carding again, preparing for weaving or knitting. After dyeing, the wool may go through a second round of carding. This process helps smooth out any irregularities in the yarn's thickness and ensures that the color is even throughout. If the wool is to be woven, it'll be prepared by carding it again into sheets or bats. These sheets of wool are then ready to be spun into yarn, and the fibers are aligned in the perfect way to make weaving easier. This extra step ensures that no yarn is too thick or thin, and that every part of the yarn is the same color and texture. It also helps smooth out any excess fuzz that may remain from the previous carding process. Essentially, it's like polishing the wool to perfection. For wool that's destined for knitting, the yarn is spun into skeins, ready for use in knitting machines or by hand knitters. Wool is incredibly versatile, which is why it's used in so many different ways, from lightweight clothing to thick, cozy winter garments. Weaving or knitting, turning yarn into fabric. Now comes the part where the yarn finally starts to look like something you could wear. Weaving or knitting. Weaving and knitting are two distinct methods used to turn yarn into fabric, but they both share a common goal: to create a durable, flexible textile that can be used to make everything from sweaters to suits. When yarn is woven, it's passed through a loom, where it's interlaced with other yarns to form a fabric. The process of weaving can be done by hand, but these days industrial looms do most of the work. The yarn is fed into the loom, and the machine moves back and forth to create the woven pattern. Knitting, on the other hand, involves a series of loops, with yarn being drawn through each previous loop to create a continuous piece of fabric, while hand knitting can be a slow process. Industrial knitting machines can produce fabric at lightning speed, creating everything from lightweight t-shirts to heavy warm sweaters. Interestingly, the choice between weaving and knitting often depends on the end use of the fabric. Woven fabrics tend to be stronger and more structured, while knitted fabrics are typically stretchier and more flexible. Wool can be used for both, depending on whether you want a cozy, stretchy sweater or a firm, structured coat. Finishing. making the fabric soft and ready for wear. Once the fabric has been woven or knitted, it's not quite ready to hit the shelves just yet. The next step is finishing, which involves a range of processes designed to enhance the fabric's appearance and texture. Finishing techniques can vary, but one of the most common is fulling. Fulling is a process where the wool fabric is washed and felted to make it softer and denser. This also helps wool retain its shape and resist shrinking. Another common finishing process is milling, which involves applying heat and moisture to the fabric to shrink it slightly, creating a tighter, more compact weave. This can give wool garments that smooth, soft texture that we associate with high-end wool clothing. In addition to these techniques, wool fabrics can also be brushed or sheared to create a soft, smooth surface. This is especially common for wool used in outerwear like coats or jackets. After the fabric has been finished, it's carefully inspected for any flaws or imperfections. Only the best pieces of fabric make it to the final stages. Quality control, the final check. Before the wool fabric can be made into clothing, it goes through a final quality control check. Every meter of wool fabric is carefully inspected for any imperfections, whether it's a missed dye spot, a tear, or a missed stitch. Machines and human inspectors work together to ensure the fabric meets high-quality standards. It's at this stage that manufacturers might test the durability of the wool by stretching it, washing it again, or even running it through wear and tear simulations. Wool's natural resilience means that it's often quite durable, but manufacturers still test it rigorously to make sure it can handle everyday use. Once the wool passes all of these tests, it's ready for the next step: garment production. Turning wool into clothes, the final transformation. Now that we've got beautiful, soft wool fabric, it's time to turn it into something you can wear. Whether it's a luxurious wool sweater, a classic wool suit, or a pair of cozy wool socks, garment production is the final step in the process. Wool fabrics are cut, sewn, and tailored into the final garments. This process can be done by hand or machine, depending on the type of clothing being made. For example, high-end wool suits are often carefully tailored by skilled workers, while everyday wool garments like sweaters and scarves may be made using more automated processes. The beauty of wool lies in its versatility, from fine merino wool used in lightweight garments to heavier wool used for winter coats. There's virtually no end to the kinds of wool garments you can find. Wool even gets used in blends with other fibers like silk or cashmere to create luxury fabrics that are soft, durable, and incredibly stylish. Sustainability, wool's green credentials. Wool isn't just great because of how well it works as a fabric. It's also an incredible, sustainable choice. Wool is renewable, biodegradable, and often produced with minimal environmental impact. Unlike synthetic fibers, which are made from petroleum-based products, wool comes from sheep that naturally grow and shed their fleece every year. This makes wool a fully renewable resource. Sheep grazing on grasslands also help maintain healthy ecosystems, preventing overgrowth and promoting biodiversity. Additionally, wool is biodegradable. That means when your wool garment reaches the end of its life, it won't just sit in a landfill for hundreds of years. Wool breaks down naturally, returning nutrients to the soil. As the demand for sustainable fabrics grows, wool continues to be a preferred choice for eco-conscious consumers who want to make responsible fashion choices. And there you have it, the journey of wool, from the humble sheep to the fabric we rely on for warmth, style, and comfort. What began as a simple natural fiber is carefully transformed through each of these detailed steps, from shearing to spinning, dyeing to weaving, and finally into the finished garments we love to wear. Wool's remarkable versatility and sustainability continue to make it one of the most beloved fibers in the world. Whether you're sporting a cozy sweater or a sharp wool suit, you're wearing a material that's been honed through centuries of craftsmanship and innovation. It's a story of nature, science, and artistry all woven together into every stitch of wool clothing. Now, the next time you pull on your favorite wool sweater or slip into a soft pair of wool socks, you'll know just how much goes into making that piece of comfort. From the fields to the factory, it's a fascinating journey that makes wool much more than just a fabric. It's a symbol of the beauty and complexity behind everyday essentials. If you've enjoyed discovering how wool makes its way from sheep to sweater, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button for more fascinating insights into the processes behind everyday products. Got any favorite wool items in your wardrobe? Drop a comment below and share what you love most about wool. And if you're curious about other fabrics or materials and how they're made, let us know in the comments. There's always something new and interesting to explore. Stay cozy, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.